Hello. As we look around at today's world, we see a conflicting um, emergence of almost polarized emergence of outward display of human consciousness. We see, on the one hand, a definite movement toward enlightenment among many people who are karmically ready to embrace a new consciousness that is um, one that will deliver us from a lot of the plagues that we've suffered in the last 6,000 years. But at the same time, there is uh, quite obviously a very reactionary movement on behalf of a large segment of the population, of the world's population, that is rising up to try to thwart this movement toward enlightenment. And so it's it's a time of great conflict and on the world stage right now. It seems almost inevitable that the Enlightenment movement will win out in the end because human consciousness has been evolving and continues to evolve as a matter of science. But this reactionary movement that wants to stop the uh, the enlightenment of mankind is rising up with great venom right now. And to understand this, we have to understand that this reactionary movement is very old. It's not new. It's been around throughout the entire age. And at times, it sort of goes underground or relaxes its grip a little bit. But right now, it's being very forceful, and it is old. And the reason that it's been with us since the beginning of the age is that it is this reactionary movement on a part of human society that has controlled our society and has been in power and has not wanted to relinquish that power. And obviously, the movement toward a new consciousness of enlightenment will undermine the status quo to the point where they lose power eventually. And this is what they're fighting right now. This is why they're rising up so strongly. And it's unfortunately, I don't see this status quo movement sort of going quietly into the night. I see them as putting up a very big fight. Um, they are mostly concerned with power and wealth and control. And on the other side, the Enlightenment movement has not developed any of those tendencies to where they're, even though they have science on their side, humanly speaking, they're weak and they're not going to be able to stand up to the strength of the status quo. But as I said, science, the evolution of consciousness, is actually something that will prove to be stronger in the end. But I'm afraid we're heading for a very large global confrontation about this. And that's why a lot of what we see going on in the world right now is so painful and conflicting. And we have to understand that all of this is happening because of states of consciousness. Human consciousness goes back, well, at least 6,000 years. We always have had consciousness as a species, but as far as we can deduce from historical records, it was about 6,000 years ago that our consciousness really turned on, came alive, and awoke. And so there has always been, throughout this age, a demonstration of human consciousness. That's what has made our world into what it is now, is that consciousness has creative energies and power, and it creates conditions and outward circumstances without doing anything, just by being what it is. So states of consciousness are very powerful, and that's what we've seen throughout this age. And though consciousness as an endowment, as a created endowment, is evolutionary in nature, we have throughout this age done our very utmost to try to keep that evolutionary nature in check. We've tried to stop it. And again, the reason has to do with this status quo movement being in control. Um, from the very beginning of the age, their policy has been the same toward consciousness evolution, and that is to try and nip it in the bud and stop it from happening. And so what we have to understand is that there are states of consciousness that have been creating a demonstration in our world for 6,000 years, but that even though there are individual states of consciousness, there have been only two dominant collective states of consciousness. And the Bible, it's very interesting that the Bible portrays these two states of consciousness in two human figures. And it's parabolic, but in the first human figure, we see a man named Adam in the Bible, in the opening pages. And we see that Adam awoke to his state of consciousness in what the Bible calls the knowledge of good and evil. So Adam, his state of consciousness came to reflect a very dualistic viewpoint of life. Every good aspect of life had its other side, its evil side, and everything was perceived in terms of duality. And this caused us to become like human gods, like the ability to judge between good and evil, gave us the sense that we were the creators, we were the ones in control and power on this earthly plane, and therefore we didn't need another god. We didn't need a god in heaven. We were gods. And so Adam's consciousness also found him in the book of Genesis hiding from God. This was a dominant collective state that took root in human genetics and was passed down from generation to generation, and in fact is the dominant consciousness that we are still moving in after 6,000 years. But the evolution of consciousness is a promise based on science, based on law, that mankind is not done yet, that we are still evolving, and that we will one day evolve out of the state that the Bible calls Adam or Adamic. Interestingly, the Bible portrays this state for us prophetically, and that state is the state to which we are heading is revealed in the person of Jesus, Jesus the Christ, as he is called or was called. So what we really find is that Adam and Christ are the two dominant states of consciousness that mankind has been exposed to. And we have been moving in the state of Adam, but the hope of enlightenment, the hope of consciousness evolution, is the state of the Christ. And Jesus, as a man, demonstrated this state to us so that we could have that vision of where we are headed. And so the whole age has been a very dramatic outworking of these two states of consciousness, and always, well, the dominant demonstration outwardly has been Adamic, but always we've had the hope of the Christ within us, because we are on some level aware that our consciousness is capable of that. And so throughout this age, the demonstration of Adam, what I call the status quo, has been very overbearing about its demonstration, preferring that things don't change. Things stay the same. That's why it's called the status quo. And that the movement, the evolutionary thrust towards enlightenment be halted at all costs. And that's why when they were confronted with Jesus 2,000 years ago as the Christ, they immediately moved to silence him and put him to death. But things haven't changed since then. The status quo was able, even after that great demonstration of the enlightenment that mankind is capable of in the Christ, even after that, the status quo was able to maintain their control over human society. So things didn't really change that much with Jesus's advent, although it became even stronger as an evolutionary thrust in the consciousness of mankind that we were capable of this and we were moving forward uh, according to the evolution of consciousness, whether the status quo liked it or not. And that's why throughout this age we've seen many enlightened outworkings in human society, from scientific knowledge to inventions to creative contributions in music and art and literature, etc. These are all indications that human consciousness is capable of much more than what we are seeing at present. And unfortunately, uh, the status quo has shown itself to be brutal in many cases to repress this outworking. And that's why there's been a terrible amount of suffering in the human community throughout this age, and poverty, and uh, um, just suffering in human life, associated with human life. The great hope of the consciousness of Christ is that that suffering will ease or be eradicated altogether. Even death, that's when Jesus rose from the dead. This was an indication that the Christ uh, cannot die, and so is not subject to the kind of torment that the fear of death causes us now. So the climate in the world right now, as enlightenment draws near, as the new consciousness of mankind, as we stand on that threshold, the climate in our world is becoming even darker, just like the darkest hour before the dawn. Uh, it's it's coming. The light is coming. The light of dawn is coming, but the uh, darkness of all of man's uh, regressive tendencies are coming to the surface right now, and making things very difficult as a whole. But the thing that we need to do most as we work toward developing our own consciousness and moving into that enlightened state of the Christ, the thing we need to do most is just to keep our focus on the hope that we have ahead of us. And on, it's not a hope of God doing something for us. It's a hope of law and science working in the evolution of human consciousness. It's a faith that is based not a blind faith, uh, but a faith that is based on true knowledge and true uh, scientific outworking. Therefore, it's a really powerful faith and hope that we can have, and there's really nothing that can stop it or come against it. And so we may be discouraged at times in the near future with the events going on in the world, wars, rumors of wars. These are all outworkings of Adamic consciousness that are destined to pass away. Disease, we're still not getting the upper hand on disease, poverty. Um, but our great hope lying ahead is that when Christ consciousness, when the new consciousness becomes a reality for us, uh, many of these plagues that we've had to wade through in this age will be gone.